Yo, peep this. You just clicked on Let's View It, and I'm Tyrone Cross. Welcome to my channel, where I'm here to entertain you as I react to TikTok videos and discuss other topics I find interesting or important or just crazy. And all I ask from my new viewers is after this video, if you like how I do what I do, then please subscribe and help support me. Or I might just fall over and hit my head. Get it? Help support me? Anyways, now let's get into this video. But before I start running my mouth, my lawyer advised me to say this video is for entertainment purposes only, or hopefully to open your mind. I do not condone hate, violence, or harassment towards anyone. So anything you do before, during, or after this video, you're on your own, bro. So now let me get into this video. This video is a little different than the normal videos I do. I wouldn't exactly call it a deep dive. It's more like a dip in the pool. But as you guys know, especially if you've seen my channel, there's a lot of chaos going on with this transgender movement. We are all aware of this. But how many of us know, where did this all start? Who was the first person to ever say the words gender identity? Who was the first person to claim a boy could be born in a girl's body and a girl could be born in a boy's body, and furthermore, they can just transition and live their life as the opposite gender? Or what about the question of, when did gender and sex become two different things? And do you ever wonder why the trans community never speaks of this man, even though he's the whole reason why this ideology exists to this day? Well, fortunately for you guys, I know the answer, but unfortunately, the answer is a dark story, and it involves a cruel doctor that made a little baby boy grow up as a girl. So you already know, let's view it.
The medical community was under the impression that my case was a success story. And I was shocked when I heard that people thought that my case was a success story.
That interview you just saw is of a man named David Reimer. David Reimer is not only the victim, but is also the star of the story involving the man right here, Dr. John Money. Dr. John Money is the inventor of gender identity. He is the father of the idea that we can be born in the wrong body and just switch genders and live as a different gender. Now, if you think about it, it's kind of weird because most people don't even know who this doctor is, which you would think you would just for the simple reason that the trans community should be praising this guy, celebrating this guy, probably having a national holiday on his birthday. But yet they don't speak of him. In fact, they say when we speak of him, we only do it because we're transphobic. I know that sounds confusing, but after you hear this story, you're going to know exactly why the trans community don't speak of Dr. John Money. Now let me break down a little bit more about who Dr. John Money is before we start this crazy story between him and David Reimer. Dr. John Money was born in New Zealand, and he is a pioneer in his field of gender and sexuality. In 1955, he became the first person to ever use the word gender instead of sex. And the only reason why he created that word was so he can draw a distinction between what makes a male and female biologically and what makes a male and female behaviorally. And soon after that, he popularized the word gender identity and even also founded the first gender identity clinic, which was at the Johns Hopkins University in Baltimore, where they specialized in psychological and medical treatment for trans people. And that was in 1966. So that's just a little history of who this doctor is. And the core of what he believed is now what people believe to this day. Now, they didn't take everything he believed. There are some things that he believed that the trans community does not carry with them today. And one of those beliefs was Dr. John Money believed that there was a gender gate. And what he meant by gender gate was he believed that from when a baby is born till the age of 2 is the open opportunity for the parent to influence what gender the kid's gonna be. But once the kid turns 2, the gender is now locked in. Now, obviously, the transgender community today couldn't carry that belief, or you couldn't have gender fluidness, you couldn't have them bouncing back and forth, you couldn't have grown men turning into women and then whooping their ass in sports. So basically, if the trans community kept the gender gate belief, it would ruin their whole ideology. So now that you know who Dr. John Money is, Let's get into the nitty and the gritty of this crazy story. This story starts on August 22nd, 1965, when a lady named Janet Reimer gives birth to two twin boys named Bruce and Brian. Bruce and Brian were perfectly healthy, but little did Janet know her two twin boys will play a big part in history and become test subjects of a gender identity experiment run by the one and only Dr. John Money. See, what happened was, when the babies turned 7 months old, they were taken to the local hospital for a routine circumcision. Now, Brian was the first one up to bat. Now, I don't know why, but for some reason, the doctor that did his circumcision used an electrical machine, like some sort of cauterizer, to do his circumcision and ended up burning his penis really bad. So Janet Reimer, obviously the mother of the baby, is panicking and she takes them home. Bruce, the twin brother, doesn't get the circumcision. But the damage that was done to Brian's penis, the burn from the electrical machine, was so bad that the mother feared that he would be teased and ridiculed his whole life. But not long after the accident, she thought her prayers might be answered. You see, Janet Reimer and her husband were sitting down watching a television program. And who was on that television program? You guessed it, Dr. John Money. And not only was Dr. John Money on the television program, he brought a special guest. And that special guest was a transgender woman. And apparently this transgender woman looked very feminine to Janet Reimer. Plus you add on a highly renowned doctor like Dr. John Money talking about how easy you can just switch genders and live your life as the opposite gender. So it hit Janet like, this is her solution. This is her answer to her prayers. She could just have Brian Reimer live as a girl. So Janet proceeds to write a letter to Dr. John Money explaining her situation with Brian. And of course, Dr. John Money doesn't take much time to respond and says, come down here and visit him in Baltimore. And of course, as you could imagine, Janet Reimer's feeling desperate. So they go to Baltimore and visit Dr. John Money. Now remember who Dr. John Money is. This is a doctor who wants to prove that people can switch genders before they turn 2, as long as they're within his gender gate, right? So for him to be sent 2 twin boys is like his dream come true when it comes to test subjects. You couldn't get better test subjects. 2 babies that couldn't be more identical or the same person, both of them boys, and he gets to see if he can make one turn into a girl. So you know what Dr. Money suggests to Janet Reimer? He says, since Brian can't live as a boy no more with his damaged penis, you should make him live as a girl. You should dress him as a girl, you should treat him as a girl, and you should change his name. This is the weirdest part. He tells her, you can never tell him that he was a boy. Now, unfortunately, Janet Reimer agrees to this. This sounds like a good idea to her. So she decides to treat Brian like a girl. She dresses him like a girl, responds to him like a girl, and even changed his name to Brenda. But the worst part was, when he was 18 months old, they castrated him and gave him a rudimentary vagina. Now I ain't gonna lie, I had to look up rudimentary, and it means minimal, minor, like the very basics. But with that being the meaning, you can't put rudimentary in front of anything. How do you give a boy a rudimentary vagina? I don't even want a nick on my penis. If my penis gets stuck in the zipper, I'm calling 911. 1, because it hurts like hell, but 2, should I go up or down? How did it even get in there? Is my penis David Blaine? But what I'm assuming they mean by rudimentary vagina is they didn't give him the big hole. So now here Brian is, castrated, dressed as a girl. His name is Brenda now, and he's living his life this way. He's going through kindergarten, 1st grade, 2nd grade as Brenda the girl. But things didn't go as smooth as Dr. John Money said they would. Brian/Brenda wasn't feeling right. Brian knew something was wrong. Brian was having behavioral issues. So what did Janet do? Janet Reimer ended up contacting Dr. John Money again and telling him, Brian is not acting right. Brian is not taking this well. Brian is not adjusting to being Brenda like you said he would. He suggested to Janet Reimer that Brian needs more influence on how to be a girl. So Dr. John Money suggested that Janet Reimer bring her boys in to him. So Janet Reimer started leaving these boys with Dr. John Money. And what Dr. John Money started doing is absolutely cruel, disturbing, and perverted. Dr. John Money would talk about the differences in genitalia to Brian and Bruce. He would also show Brian photos of new women having babies, trying to convince Brian to get what he called a baby hole. Dr. John Money wanted so bad to give this boy a full-on vagina. And not only that, he would have Brian posing in new positions while he takes pictures of him. And even worse than that, it is said that Dr. John Money would have Brian and Bruce do sexual acts together, trying to convince Brian that he should be sexually attracted to boys. Now, in all fairness, it is said that Janet Reimer knew nothing of this, that she did not know these were the tactics that Dr. John Money were using. And as time passed, Brian finally turns 13. His behaviors have gotten so bad that finally the family decides to break the news to him and tell him that he's a boy. And at the moment, he felt relief because he had answers of why he was so crazy inside, why he felt so crazy, why he felt so confused. So now at that point, when he turns 14, he goes back to living as a boy. As more time passes, eventually he meets a woman, falls in love, and marries her. Ends up having stepkids, but then tragically, at the age of 28, he kills himself.
You're always going to see people that are going to say, well, the Dave Reimer case could have been successful. I'm living proof. And if you're not going to take my word as gospel, because I have lived through it, who else are you going to listen to? Who else is there? I've lived through it. Is it going to take somebody to wind up killing themselves, shooting themselves in the head for people to listen?
And then shortly after that, the twin that's been overshadowed in this whole story, his brother Bruce, ends up killing himself too. Because remember, he went through some of this abuse as well. Plus, if you take in the fact that they lied to him, that Bruce thought he had a twin sister all the way until the age of 13. So everything these boys went through with Dr. John Money became too much for them to handle and messed them up so much that they both took their own lives. So that's the story of Dr. John Money, the founder of gender identity, and what he did to David Reimer. And I will say, I did go out and try to look for an article that would debunk this story. I found one that was trying to debunk it, and I read it. It was written with the same ideology that transgenders carry to this day. It was very biased. The arguments were the exact same thing you hear to this day of why Dr. John Money doesn't matter to them. You know what the article said? Sure, he founded gender identity. Sure, he did this to David Reimer. Sure, Dr. John Money never spoke about this case. But that doesn't mean you get to deny our existence. That doesn't mean we shouldn't have a right to transgender affirming care. That doesn't mean you get to eradicate us. Literally just going down the gaslighting list. So when I noticed that was what they were saying to debunk it, that this story is true. And the trans community just don't want people to know that the idea of gender identity came from a psychopathic doctor. And not only that, everything he was trying to prove got disproven. But now that you know the story and how we got to the situation we're in right now, all I need you guys to do is comment below. Tell me what you think. But while you're sharing your thoughts, also share the video. But while you share the video, I'm also gonna need you to hit that bell like the hunchback. Also click that hitchhiker button and subscribe with me. And I'll see you on the next trip.
Day and night. Keep it real. Keep it real. Keep it real. All my life. Keep it real. Keep it real. Keep it real. Can't help keep it real. Keep it real. Keep it real. That's why I keep it real. Keep it real. Keep it real.